name is Stephanie, and this is episode 146. Today I have some knitting, crocheting, gardening, reading, canning to share with you. It has been about, I think, 6 or 7 weeks since we last had a full-on project update video. The summer energy is just a little more unpredictable, chaotic in a good way around here. The summer went so fast. I feel like the rhythm of the summer is very different from the school year. It is just busy in a different way, not in the sense that we have like packed schedules, but that every week is so different that you don't fall into necessarily a day-to-day kind of routine, and that's totally okay with me. We just kind of go with the seasons and how that energy kind of takes us along for the ride. I feel like this summer we didn't spend as much time in the garden, so it went a little bit wild, but we still got to enjoy some beautiful flowers, as I shared with you in the beginning of this video as I walked in. So I mentioned we have some crafting to talk about today that I have done in the last couple of months. And I think how I'm going to break it up is I'm going to go through a lot of the finished projects today, and then hopefully next week or the week after I will share with you some of my works in progress, and if any of them have finished by then, I will share them with you as finished projects. There are 2 patterns that I am currently testing that I've actually finished, but I'm going to save those to talk about after the pattern release date. If you are new here, the way I usually organize my videos is in the beginning we have an intro welcome section, and then we go into finished projects or what I am wearing. Sometimes the 2 are the same, and then we go into works in progress, but as I mentioned, I'll do that in a next video. And then we go into eats and reads, where I share with you maybe things I've cooked up, new recipes I've tried, and I do have something to talk about there. I don't want to forget. I think I wrote it down. We had recently picked 100+ pounds of plums, and there was a lot of canning going on. I do have a few books that I jotted down that I read recently. I think I have 3 books written down that I wanted to mention. I did read way more than that over the summer. However, these are the 3 that I wrote down, and so those are what I'm going to talk about. Links to things that I talk about will be in the description box below this video. I try to just link to a designer or maker's full website, and then you can go find their social medias or specific patterns or yarns or things like that. I do use Ravelry for my project pages that are knit or crocheted, and I do include closed captionings on all of my videos here on YouTube. You click on that CC button. And if I speak faster or slower than your preferences, you can also adjust the speed here on YouTube. I think that is all of the kind of like overview stuff that I wanted to talk about. So it is the first week of September, year 2025. I am coming to you from a beautiful, blustery, fall-like day here in Minnesota. When I mean fall-like, I mean it was like 47 degrees Fahrenheit this morning, which is I think 8 degrees Celsius. And I feel like that's a little lower than we usually get at the beginning of September, but I am not complaining. The high will get up to, I think, 60s or something, maybe by the afternoon. And I do think next week it's supposed to get warmer again to mid-70s. It is definitely sweater weather here. And for me, when we start the school year, that is kind of the start of fall for me. I know that technically the fall equinox isn't until I think September 21st or 22nd, but I feel like as soon as we turn the calendar page to September and the year for school starts, that it feels like fall to me. I know for some people that the weather really determines what they feel like making. For me, I make all year round. I do more sewing during the summer generally, mostly because I prefer sewing with like linen and cotton rather than knitting with linen or cotton. I will do blends with linen and cotton, and I will knit with linen and cotton, but my preference is still knitting with wool blends. And therefore sewing, I will go towards those warmer fibers or warmer weather fibers. Also, our summer season is pretty short here in Minnesota. It's 3 months out of the year. And so if I am going to be making a garment for warmer weather, I would rather it come together a little quicker than it would if I was knitting. And that way I just get more opportunity to wear it like the same day or the next day or the same week, versus if I was knitting it, it may be a month later until I wear it, which is totally fine because it's okay for things to take time. And I don't always want to be knitting on a warm weather garment in plant fibers when it is 10 degrees outside. I would rather be knitting on something that's woolly and warm in my lap. And so I go towards sewing for a lot of my warm weather garments. And today I have several to share with you, and I'm so excited about them. I think I'm going to section out my finished project section between sewing and knit crochet items. However, I feel like some things kind of go together, and so they might get mixed up. I don't know. I think in my brain right now, I'm going to split it up between sewing and the knitting, but if you skip one or the other, you might miss out on like combinations of the two. So I'm not sure. This is for future editing stuff I need to figure out. So maybe this is just like a note to my future self on how I want to split things up with timestamps in the description box, which would be a good thing to point out right now that I do usually put timestamps for the different sections, but I don't always put timestamps for like subsections. So again, that's for future me to figure out, but we'll find out what I decide to do. I feel like I need to talk about what I'm wearing right now because I am so excited about it. This is my This is my Getty tee by Tanis Lavalley. I finished this, I think, end of July, and I have it worn over a modified Ashton top that I made into this peplum hem situation in linen, and the Ashton top is a pattern by Helen's Closet. And so I think what I'm going to do first is still talk about my sewing items, and then we'll kind of like segue into what I'm wearing, and then that will kind of segue into the knitting. Yes, I'm just like thinking out loud here as we go, so we're just going with it. So let's go to this pile. The Ashton top, as I mentioned, is a pattern by Helen's Closet. This is a Canadian company. They are very size inclusive. I really like the formatting of their patterns. I feel like there's enough white space where my eyes don't just like blur together between all the numbers and the words. And I also like their explanations on the different techniques, why you do it, when you do it. And there are always a lot of different views and options, and how to do modifications are on their blog. The Ashton top comes in a size range of 0 to 30, and it's graded for a 33 to 58 inch hip. There are 2 size options. You get a B-cut pattern from sizes 0 to 22 and a D-cut pattern from sizes 12 to 30. I went with the pattern recommendation for which size to make, and I didn't make a muslin. I figured that if it didn't work out, it didn't work out. And so all of the ones that I made are very wearable and really comfortable and are made to pattern as far as the size goes for my body measurements, and I didn't have to modify any of those things. So the only modification I made was in the hemline, which I just wanted to do something different, and I don't really have to do many different grading things for that, and so it's a pretty easy modification to make. So this here is my first Ashton top. This is 100% linen, and this is the all-in-one facing option, and I'm going to turn it inside out so you have a better idea of what that facing looks like. The raw edges are tucked inside, and then all my edges here are finished on an overlocker, so they are serged. And then you can see here the peplum means I did not do any sort of facing for the bottom, which is in the pattern there's a facing for the bottom hem. And then on a different one, oh yes, I have it here. A different one, I just did a fold up of the bottom hem, I think like quarter of an inch, so the raw edge is on the inside. But here's my ruffle. I think this ruffle I did 1.5 times the circumference of the body. And this one does have bust darts, which are not scary. It tells you how to do them in the pattern, and I didn't have to do any adjustments on that. So this fits really well. So after I made this one, actually I have 4, but the 4th one I'm going to share with you next week because I want to wear it with one of my finished test patterns. And yeah, so I'm gonna save that one for next week. But then the second one is this teal one that I'm wearing. So the top is the same, it's sleeveless. There's this nice crew neck. So it's sleeveless, there are bust darts. I didn't change anything with the top. I did shorten it by 1 inch to raise the start of the peplum hem a little higher. And then I did a deeper peplum compared to my brown one. I'll try to hold it up here. So this peplum is maybe like, I think 2 to 3 inches longer maybe. And then I had it start a little bit higher on my body. I think I had it start right at my belly button, so like around my natural waist. And then this one I cut to be about 2 times the circumference of the body, so there are more gathers. It is very twirly and comfortable, and I have it worn with jeans right now. And I have my Getty tee that I knit to be more of a slip over than a tee I would wear on its own. And I did make some modifications to this, but I will talk about that again later. But it is at a cropped length, and it has this split high-low hem, which fits very nicely over this gathered peplum. And I just love how this looks together. It is so fun, whimsical, and the colors pair really well together. I love a deep teal, I love my jewel tones, and I feel like it's the perfect transition into fall. So the linen isn't exactly warm, it's cooling, but I have this knit wool, linen, alpaca blend slip over on top of it, and the crocheted shoulder parts and the crocheted shoulders give a little airflow because there's some holes. It is just the perfect transitional outfit going into fall, and I'm just so pleased with it. All right, I couldn't help myself. I kind of went off into a tangent there, maybe just a slight tangent. I'm going to show you my third Ashton top. Now we're going back into like full-on summer vibes. I did sew this up at the end of August. However, it is very summery, and I just love it so much. So I initially started with this skirt. This is a self-drafted tiered gathered skirt, 100% linen. It's in this lemon lime neon. Yes, it's as bright as it looks. It's kind of like a tennis ball, and I just love it. I have inseam pockets here, and I did do an elastic waist, but also a tie. And if you need more instruction, so again, this is self-drafted. I didn't follow a tutorial or pattern. I've made a whole bunch of these. The Helen's Closet blog has a hack for one of their other patterns. It's a dress pattern. It's the Lawrence top and dress, and the bottom is tiered gathered layers. You can follow the instructions on that blog post to make a skirt like this. I think my tiers are maybe double on the bottom compared to the top. So after I made this skirt, I made another orchard top, which is a free pattern on Helen's Closet website. So it's this camisole, and I did make my bias binding, I think, double the width of what's in pattern to cover bra straps better. And I love this top. It's the same on the front and back, so it's fully reversible. I cut my other piece, so like there's a front and a back piece, but it's the same. So I cut one of them on the fold, and I cut the other one on the selvage edge. So there is a seam there. And I did use a green thread that is not as invisible, just to add that little bit of contrast. And depending on what I feel like, I can wear that on the front or I can wear it on the back. So this is the cropped view of the orchard top. So then I decided I wanted to make an Ashton top to go with this set. And here is my Ashton top. It is so much fun. I wanted to make a color block applique version, and this is also 100% linen. I had this fabric left over from a skirt that I made for my daughter, and I didn't have a lot of big chunks left, and so I needed to do some creative piecing. And I also didn't have a ton of this neon left, so between the two, I added this shoulder piece here, and the middle split right down the middle. Those are sewn in. I'm going to show you what the inside looks like. So those pieces are sewn in. I just have the seam allowance pressed towards the center. For the bias binding, I used a lightweight cotton. It's a light blue and white. I like how it looks like candy cane stripes on the bias. The bottom hem, I just folded up 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch. And then these little pieces on the front were cut out from, I think they must have been cut out from the armholes of my orchard top, because I didn't change them at all, and they're just these kind of curved pieces. And these ones I tucked the edges in and sewed it right on top of the fabric, so those ones are applique. So you can see that there isn't any of the neon on the inside. It's just on the outside. I'll put a picture of me wearing my skirt with this Ashton top here on the screen so you can get an idea of what the whole outfit looks like. I just love it. It is so summery and so much fun and so easy to wear and comfortable. And I did forget to mention why I did the elastic on the skirt plus the tie is so that it's more versatile for wearing. So if I want to wear it a little lower on my body or a little higher on my body, either way it's still going to fit and it doesn't feel as restricting. I feel like sometimes if I want the waistband to sit on my natural waist, I need it a little bit smaller. But if I want to sit it lower on my waist, then I need it a little wider. And then I don't want it to feel too tight. And so this way I can adjust it with the tie if I'm going to have it sit a little bit higher. And then if I want to wear it a little bit lower, I don't have to tie the tie very tight. I can just let the elastic part be my waist circumference. All right, the last sewing item I want to share with you is another tiered gathered skirt. This fabric is linen blended with cotton, I believe, and it's actually a herringbone, but it's hard to tell that from a distance. It actually just looks pink from a distance, but it is a herringbone patterning. I also did inseam pockets here. I did the elastic waist with the tie, and I love this skirt so much. I feel like this skirt would also look really nice with my Getty tee. It's also a great color for transitioning into fall. Because it's cotton linen, not just linen, I feel like this is slightly warmer than the full-on linen skirt, which also makes it a great transition into fall. I can wear it with a jean jacket and a t-shirt underneath. I'll put a picture of me wearing it here on the screen with a sweater tee, and I really liked that look as well. All right, we are on to the knitting crocheting portion of the finished projects. And now we get to talk about the Getty tee. So this is a pattern by Tanis Lavalley. As I mentioned, it is a DK weight pattern. It is knit top down, and you actually crochet these saddle shoulders first. So these are granny squares. And I decided to make all 4 granny squares the same. You can make them different. You can create various color stories. They can be as random as you want them to be, or all one color. So I decided to use Pearl Soho Linen Quill Held Double. It is a fingering weight yarn that I love. This yarn is a blend of 50% fine Highland wool, 35% alpaca, and 15% linen. 439 yards for 100 grams, so I held it double to achieve the DK weight. I did use the recommended needle size in the pattern, I believe. The granny squares, I used an F hook, which is a 3.75 millimeter needle, and the main fabric I used a US 6, which is a 4 millimeter needle, and then for my ribbing I used a US 4, which is a 3.5 millimeter needle. The age of the pattern is 22 stitches by 28 rows in 4 inches of stockinette stitch, and I ended up using a little more than 300 grams of yarn. I knit the front and the back per pattern. I did the shoulders per pattern. The main color here is rosewood pink. It's like a cool toned mauvey pink color. And then I decided for my ribbing to use kiln red, which is more of a brick orangey leaning red. For the hem, I continued in rosewood pink and just did a contrast in the kiln red. I did have to do some yarn management because I had a limited amount of yarn, and so I just added contrast where I thought it looked nice and intentional, and then used up as much of the main color as I could. The split hem, I believe in the pattern, is the same length on the front and back. If it's different, I don't remember. Again, I finished this end of July and it's the beginning of September, so I don't remember all the details. But I did do my split hem a little differently, that I remember. Because I have found that in split hems, sometimes it wants to ladder right where the split is, and the stitches can get kind of pulled. So this way I overlapped it by a few stitches, and so there's just more stability, and I don't end up with any stitches pulling or any laddering. That part is not in the pattern. I do not have a tutorial to direct you to. I feel like if you want to play around, maybe do some swatching and then just see what you can do. I could probably do it again but I couldn't quite explain to you how I did it right now on camera on the fly. But I feel like it had to do with adding extra needles in there to pick up some stitches and then having them parallel and knitting them together so that they were crossing over each other. Maybe play around with swatches or see if you can find a tutorial if you need one, but I found it really easy to do. It was just something that I conceptualized and did it. I know I'm not the first person to ever do it this way. This is just the first time I did it, and I just did it on my own, and I thought it worked out great. As for the rest of the colors on here, so I mentioned the rosewood pink, the kiln red. Now in the granny squares, the center here is vintage celadon. It's kind of a robin's egg-ish blue. And then this raw sienna is more of an ochre yellow-brown golden color. Then we have honey pink, which is like a beigey yellow with a slight hint of pink. And then we have purple smoke, which is a blue-toned lavender. And then I finished off with the kiln red, which I wanted to be the same as the ribbing so that it was more of a seamless transition into the ribbing. I did do a little bit of waist shaping in the body because I knew I was going to knit it more cropped than the pattern and I didn't want it too boxy or tenty. So I did do some decreases along the side before I started my hem. I think in total I decreased by about 8 stitches. And then for my split hem, I did 2 inches from the front, 4 inches for the back, so that I would have that high-low contrast. The pattern has it intended to be longer and worn as a tee, but for me, at this weight with this fiber content of yarn, I don't think I would typically just wear it on its own, but rather as a slip over, like I mentioned earlier, something that I can layer. I really like it with this sleeveless peplum top. I think it will also look really nice with flannel shirts underneath, the plaid long sleeve flannels that I wear basically all fall, winter, and into spring, or a denim collar button-up shirt I think would also look really nice with this. I think I can wear it with a turtleneck and jeans, and I just feel like it's going to add that coziness that I really lean into when it becomes fall and into the winter and in the springtime. So I know I'm gonna get a lot of wear out of this, and I just love the color story created. Ta-da! I don't think I've ever shared this on YouTube or Instagram. I think the only place you may have gotten a sneak peek of this finished project was on Ravelry, if you have access to that. I finished this project early on in the summer, so if I forget any details, I'm sorry, but all the details are on my Ravelry project page. I try to share as much here as I can just to give another way of accessing that information and to see the garment in movement, in action. This is the Northwoods V-neck by Jessie Made Designs. I have made, I think, 3 of these now. I think so, 3 of them. It is drop shoulder construction, top down, V-neck, and it is made to be color blocked. The first one I made was color blocked. The second one I modified it into a cardigan, and this is my third one that I did do most of it, I think the same, but the striping I did different. So instead of color blocking, the last 2 rows or rounds, I did 2 stripes in a contrast color. I did my V-neck in a contrast color, and then I did my hem in the same color as my stripes, as well as my cuffs. And once again, I was limited on the yarn that I had, and I didn't want to purchase more of the same color, so I wanted to see what I could do with what I had, and I'm so happy with how this turned out. I feel like this is a neutral that goes with anything. I did bring it on travels this summer, and it was just perfect to throw on. This is also Pearl Soho Linen Quill. I purchased this yarn, I think over a couple of years, just for other projects. The yarn is held double. This is a DK weight pattern, and I knit the sleeves without any decreases. It's nice and loose, which makes it really easy for layering, and I knit it to a cropped length, which I also like if I know I'm going to be layering it over pieces. I really like how it looks, again, with this Ashton top that has a peplum. I feel like the ruffled hem just gives it a fun, whimsical edge to it, to an otherwise very neutral classic. I picked the XS size, and I believe my positive ease for this, I think is within the recommendation. If not, it would be on the lower end of the recommendation in the pattern for the positive ease. And then for my sleeves, I picked up for size M, and I wanted lots of positive ease in the sleeve circumference. I really don't like it when armholes are too high, but I also don't like it when they are so deep that they're like a dolman batwing sleeve and I can't put it in a jacket. This I can actually fit under my raincoat, which has deeper armholes. My jacket does, but I also feel like because this is a piece I wanted to be able to take on travels where I tend to be layering because I don't like to overpack, so I want something that can fit for a variety of uses. And so for this, I picked up for more stitches in the sleeves so that I could comfortably wear other things underneath it, and that worked out just fine. And then I didn't want it too deep because I still needed it to fit under my raincoat, and that worked out just fine. So in total, I think I used almost 400 grams of yarn. Again, this is linen quill, which is a fingering weight yarn that I held double. Wheat flour is the main color, and I used 263 grams. And then the dark denim is the navy color. I used 100 grams. And then the raw sienna, I used about 20 grams. All right, I have 3 more finished projects to share with you. I am starting to run out of time, so we're going to hopefully get through these relatively quickly. This is a classic ribbed hat. This is a free pattern by Jake Canton on Purl Soho's website. I have made probably a dozen of these at this point. This is a Knit One, Purl One ribbed hat, and I just love it because it is forgiving in fit since there is so much stretch, but there's also great bounce back and elasticity, so it doesn't end up super saggy. Of course, it depends on what material you use. This hat is knit bottom up, so you cast on the bottom. I used an old Norwegian cast on, also known as a German twisted cast on. It's very stretchy. You could also do a tubular cast on if you like that rolled over edge. I find that the old Norwegian cast on is just fine for me and not fussy. I do weave in my ends for this on the right side because when I flip it up, it will be on the wrong side. And then when I get to the crown and I finish that, I weave that end in on the wrong side. This is 100% Portuguese wool. It is Retozaria Rosa Pomar Mondim yarn, and it is a fingering weight yarn that I have held double. I used US 3.25 millimeter needles, and I used this color called Bright Pink. I'm going to put it on for you here. I cast on for the adult small, but I think I knit past the length recommended for the largest size. And that is because I like my hats to fit more snug. And then if I'm going to knit a smaller size, there's going to be a little more stretch. So if there's going to be more stretch, you're going to lose some of that length. I like there to be a nice thick brim around the ears for wind coverage. It really bothers me when the brim is really short or only goes up halfway for the ears because then it's still really cold. And so I like a nice thick brim. If it's a little slouchy on top or has a little bit of pocket, that's okay by me. I just like to make sure there is a very thick brim to cover the ears. And I really like how this hat looks. The crown is a spiral. I like the spiral crown because then it doesn't mean I have to have the hat sitting exactly on my head a certain way. So sometimes the shaping has to be symmetrical on the head, and if I'm in a hurry and putting a hat on, I'm not going to be trying to adjust or looking in a mirror. So the top of this being a spiral crown means it doesn't matter which direction it's worn, it's going to fit just fine. So in total, I used 91 grams of yarn. I know I can knit these hats using 1 skein of fingering weight yarn held double, 1 skein of DK weight yarn. I'm not sure if I've tried it with worsted weight yarn. I'd probably go up a needle size to a US 4 or 3.5 millimeter needle so that it isn't too dense, but I'm not sure I've tried it with that yet. Maybe I have, I can't remember. The crown ended up using about 11 grams of yarn. I know that in general, I need, I think, anywhere from like 8 to 12 grams of yarn maybe to finish the crown, depending on the yarn that I'm using and the size that I'm knitting. And so I will just weigh my yarn when I get close to that point and then start doing the decreases. And usually by then, it is plenty long in the length that I'm happy with where it's at, and then I can just go ahead and do the crown. So my blocked measurements, I didn't stretch it out or pin it, I just laid it flat after soaking. The blocked measurements are 14 inches in unstretched circumference and 13 inches from the tip of the hat to the cast on edge. The water was slightly pink and wet blocking, so if you are knitting with this yarn as a contrast color, maybe to a really light colored yarn, just beware of potential bleeding in the color and maybe use a color catcher. Because this was all one color and I just blocked it in the sink by itself, I didn't have to worry about color transfer to anything else, but I did notice that the water did turn pink, and I just wanted to throw that out there as a heads up in case that makes a difference for you. So that is the classic ribbed hat by Jake Canton for Purl Soho. The next finished project I'd like to share with you is the Weekend Cami by Amy Scher. I was knitting on this in June and July, and I used the Farmer's Daughter Fibers yarn in their Bear Paw sock base, which is Yak and Superwash Merino. This is a beautiful shade of green. It reminds me of moss. And then for the I-cord edging, I use the same yarn base, but it is in a slightly lighter shade. I did that for visual interest, but also for yardage reasons. I used every last yard, every last inch of this main color. I think it came in a little more than 100 grams, which I needed. I used all 110 grams of that. And then for the lighter green, I used 14 grams of that. This is a tank top that is knit top down. It's size inclusive, it is shape inclusive. Bust darts are included in the pattern. I didn't do the bust darts. I did do some waist shaping increases in the body. I did 2 additional sets of increases in closer intervals, and I lengthened the body by 2.5 inches from the pattern. And then I also changed my pickup rate for the armholes. I felt like for the size I was knitting based on my upper bust measurement, which is what's recommended in the pattern, the armholes were going to be too high to my armpit than I was comfortable wearing, and so I picked up for a larger size. I believe I picked up for a size C, even though I knit the size A, and it fits really well. It is not too low, it is not too high, it fits really comfortably. And I really like the V-neck in the front and the back, and that the V-neck in the back is a little bit higher. This is knit top down, so you knit all 4 triangles and then you knit the body in the round. I did find that using bamboo double pointed needles to knit these triangle sections made it a little less slippery and a little less fussy since I was dealing with such a little amount of fabric. And then for the main body portion, I did switch back to metal needles for knitting that in the round. I will share some photos of myself wearing it here on the screen so you get a better idea of fit. This fabric feels so luxurious and so soft. I like to knit these camisoles as underlayers, so not necessarily as something I'm going to wear on its own, but I certainly could. There is plenty of bra strap coverage, and the armhole depth isn't too deep where I feel like it would sag over time, and the I-cord edgings give it a lot of structure, so I don't think it's going to stretch out either. This yarn did turn the water a little green when I soaked it with Eucalan and cold water. Eucalan is a wool wash, so if you do have this yarn and you use it with something else that is a lighter color, just beware that you might want to use a color catcher and that the color may bleed a little. The needle sizes used are a US 2, 2.75 millimeter for the I-cord, and a US 3, 3.25 millimeter needle for the main fabric. I tend to be a looser I-cord knitter, so I need to go down at least 1 or 2 needle sizes. In this case, I only went down 1 needle size because I wanted to make sure it wasn't too tight, since I knew I wanted my armhole edgings a little bit bigger, and I needed to make sure that my neckline wasn't going to be too tight or pucker. And so I just did a US 2 for all the I-cords and a US 3 for the main fabric. The gauge is 26 stitches by 37 rows in 4 inches. I love the drapey fabric it has created, and it is so comfortable to wear. The last finished project I have to share with you are a pair of socks. I knit these in July, and this is out of the Farmer's Daughter Fibers Elkhorn sock base. It is a super soft yarn. It is 80% superwash Punta Arenas merino and 20% nylon. 437 yards for 100 grams. This is the July 2025 Farmer's Daughter Fibers Sock Squad yarn. The Sock Squad is a monthly yarn subscription where the yarn colorways are based on the land and she artwork that's in this calendar journal. And so this is the July yarn, and the colorway is called Sights on the Horizon. I'll put a picture here on the screen of the artwork and the yarn prior to knitting it up. The teal color is actually from a different Sock Squad yarn, but the main color that has the speckles of blue with this warm beige background color and then this tonal brown, those two came in July's yarn. So the pattern I knit up is the 2024 August Colorwork Cuff Club by Summer Lee Designs. So I have paired here two Indigenous creators, the yarn dyer and the sock pattern designer. And I love this floral motif. I've knit it, I think, a couple of times now, maybe. And here I used a US 0 for the main fabric and US 1 for the colorwork. I find that this yarn is super soft and a denser fabric will make it wear better over time. And then the colorwork, I went up a needle size because I needed to make sure that it was going to fit over my heel. And with colorwork and floats, it just means there's less stretch. So the fabric can't stretch as far as if it would be without any floats. So I went up a size from my usual size, which is more like half a size up maybe. So I did the medium stitch counts, but then just use a smaller needle size. And I really like the fabric density and it fits really well over my foot. And I think that this gauge will also wear well over time. Summer Lee Designs gauges tend to be on the tighter side. I think she's just a tighter knitter. And so when I use the US 0, I think I actually get her gauge. I don't have it written down right now, so I don't know exactly what it is, but when I go down to a US 0 or 2mm needle, I do get the gauge that she has in the pattern. I ended up using 50 grams of the main color and about 6 grams of the brown for the heel. And then for the teal and the color work, I used 6.2 grams of yarn. Just for reference, I wear a US 7 or 7.5 women's shoe, and I really like how these turned out. Okay, that is all the finished projects I wanted to share with you today. I do have 3 additional ones, actually 5 additional ones. 2 are sewn, 3 are knit, and I will share those with you next time. Hopefully I can schedule out some time to record next week, and if I do, that's when you will see all those items. If not, it will be the following week. Okay, now we are on to the eats and reads section. I'm going to put pictures here on the screen of all the beautiful plums that we picked. It was like 100+ pounds of plums. My brother has a beautiful old plum tree and there was a storm coming and we had to shake out all those plums. Literally just shaking the branches made them all fall down. And so we collected all of these plums, and then between both of our households, we got to making everything plum related. I felt like we were on Iron Chef. How many different ways can you incorporate plums into something? And so we had some experiments, some worked, some didn't work. Some we won't find out if they worked until maybe December. So that was really fun, and I properly canned a lot of different jams. Some of the jams were just the plums. I did some with plum and apple. I did some with plum and blueberry. At one point my house smelled like blueberry pie because I had the plum, blueberry, cinnamon, and vanilla, I think, all together, and that just smelled amazing. So now we have enough jam to last us for probably a year or more, and I'm so delighted. The jams all just taste so good. The plums were so ripe that they weren't exactly sliceable, so I couldn't actually bake with them in any sort of cake or muffin. They would just smush. So they were great for jams, but not so great for eating necessarily on their own or for slicing up and putting into baked goods. Let's talk about a few books real quick. I will put the image of the book cover here on the screen so you have a visual to go by. And also just a heads up, if you are new here, I don't usually go through like a book summary because I feel like you can just look that up anywhere, but also I'm always so nervous about giving away spoilers that that's just not where I want to go. I just end up stumbling over everything I say, editing everything out, and who knows what it is that I'm actually saying. So instead, I usually end up giving you an overview of how I felt about the reading experience and what my thought is on the writer's style and what I was looking for, how it left me feeling, kind of more of a personal review, not really review, a personal, maybe review, overview of how that read went for me. The first book we're going to talk about is The River Has Roots. This book was published in March 2025, 133 pages. This is classified as adult fiction fantasy, but I want to make a note that it isn't the fantasy that I feel like publishers are really pushing these days. There's so much emphasis on romantasy and these like enormous 600-page books that have like 5 books in a series, and they tend to be a little repetitive, maybe. I feel like this was a breath of fresh air. It was different. It was only 133 pages. It's a standalone, and I found it to have these quirks. It was emotional, mysterious. It was fast-paced. It was adventurous. There was a nod to music and nature and wordplay and riddles, and it really talks about the weight of words, and I just felt like it was a beautiful read to really savor. So that is The River Has Roots by Amal El-Mohtar. The next book I want to bring up is Wild Dark Shore. This is published March 2025, 298 pages, another standalone and not super long. This is adult fiction, mystery, thriller. You are on this fictional island located between Tasmania and Antarctica. We're talking about modern day time. There's this family living on this remote island, and a mysterious woman washes up on shore. Okay, I said I wasn't gonna do like a summary, but that's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say. You find that out from like page 1, so I'm not giving anything away. I feel like as the story unfolds, you really kind of see it as you go. I feel like some books I'm like jumping around all over the place, or sometimes I don't really know what's going on. But this one I feel like I'm watching the story unfold and watching these characters grow and develop and kind of figure things out as they go. It's very emotional. It's very sad. We're talking about fierce love between family members and like the protective nature of what it means to be a parent and a caregiver. We're talking about sacrifice. We're talking about gray zones. And there's also a very botanically scientific twist to it. Maybe twist is not the right word. There are very botanically scientific parts to the book. So if you're into plants and things like that, I feel like you might get a little giggle out of it, and so that was fun for me. So that is Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConney. I don't know how to pronounce that. I generally try to look up interviews with these authors so that I can figure out how to pronounce their names, but I did forget to do that today. I'm sorry. The third book I wanted to mention is The Scholar and the Last Fairy Door by H.G. Perry. 437 pages, published October 2024. I believe it's a standalone. I actually didn't look that up. I'm not sure. And this is an adult fantasy, historical fiction, dark academia. As we're getting into like the fall season and school starting, I feel like this is a good mood read. We're talking fairies, curses, friendships, a love that really binds siblings together, whether or not you agree on everything. And I feel like there's a lot of conflict, a lot of emotional conflict in this book. If you like books that involve libraries and books and campuses and things like that, then this might be a setting that you want to lean into this fall. So that is The Scholar and the Last Fairy Door. Okay, my friends, I think that is everything I wanted to share with you today. I hope you enjoyed this parade of finished projects and have a couple of ideas of books you may or may not want to read. I hope to come back to you next week or the week after to share with you some projects that I'm so excited about that I'm working on. And then maybe I'll have another book or two to talk to you about. I did go to the library recently and picked up 2 books that I've had on hold, and so I'm excited to dive into those. Until then, cheers to being creative. I hope you're doing well taking care of yourselves, your loved ones, and your neighbors, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.